Water. It's the most fundamental thing, is it? And essential for, well, everything. Life, food, industry.
Absolutely. But then you look at a place like India, and that same essential resource, it's under enormous stress, crushing stress, really.
Yeah, that contrast is exactly what we're diving into today. It's the heart of the problem.
Mm-hmm. A huge population relying on water that's both getting scarcer and is often heavily polluted.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, we're focusing on a specific source. It's a sector update report looking at investment opportunities in, well, what they're calling India's water treatment revolution.
Right. And our mission really is to unpack the key takeaways from this report for you, the listener. We want to get a handle on the sheer scale of India's water challenge.
And also the forces driving the need for solutions.
Yeah, precisely. And maybe the most interesting part, the opportunities that are actually popping up as the country tries to tackle this. We'll look at the problems, the government's role, and some specific companies mentioned in the report.
Okay, let's unpack this. The report kicks off by laying out the basic problem, and it really comes down to population versus resources, doesn't it?
It does. You've got India with, what, nearly 18% of the world's population,
Right.
but only about 4% of the world's fresh water. That imbalance is stark.
And it leads directly to what the report calls a quantitative crisis. They cite projections, right? Per capita water availability dropping significantly.
Yeah, from the Central Water Commission, it was around 1,486 cubic meters per person per year back in 2021.
Okay.
And that's projected to fall to about 1,367 by 2031.
And those numbers are important because they push India below that internationally recognized threshold for being water stressed. That's 1,700 cubic meters, right?
Exactly. Below 1,700 is stressed, and they're clearly heading towards water scarce, which is under 1,000.
So this isn't some far-off problem that's happening right now.
Definitely impacting millions already.
Yeah.
But it's not just about the quantity, the amount of water per person. The quality is a massive issue, too.
Okay, tell us about that.
The report points to a severe qualitative crisis. It states that over 70% of India's surface water is polluted.
70%. Wow.
Yeah.
That's staggering.
It really is. And it doesn't stop there. Groundwater, the underground reserves, nearly 40% of those blocks are overexploited.
Meaning water's being pumped out faster than nature can refill it.
Exactly. Especially in really crucial farming areas like the Northwest and parts of the South.
And then there's the sewage issue the report brings up. A huge gap there, right?
Massive. India generates something like 72,368 MLD. That's million liters per day of sewage. A huge volume.
Okay.
But the capacity to actually treat that sewage, it's way behind. Only about 31,841 MLD gets treated.
So doing the math, that's only around 44%.
Just 44%. And, that gap is obviously a huge environmental problem, a health crisis.
Sure.
But the report also frames it differently. It sees that gap as a major opportunity for companies that can provide the treatment solutions needed.
Right. A problem driving a potential solution market. So we have this huge challenge.
Yeah.
Scarcity and pollution. What does the report say are the key forces really pushing the demand for water treatment now?
Well, there are several big ones, and they're kind of interconnected. First off, just sheer demographics. Rapid urbanization and population growth.
India's urbanizing fast.
Very fast. Projections say 50% urban by 2047. That means hundreds of millions more people living in cities.
And cities just concentrate water demand, don't they? The report says urban areas drive over 70% of industrial and domestic water needs.
Yep. And that puts immense strain on the existing pipes and plants. It demands more advanced treatment, more reuse.
Okay, so urbanization is one. What else?
Industrialization is another major driver. More factories, especially in thirsty sectors like chemicals, textiles, pharma, they all need reliable water.
But it's not just needing water. It's also about dealing with the wastewater they produce, right? Regulatory pressure.
Exactly. Industries are facing stricter rules. Things like zero liquid discharge, ZLD.
Ah, yes, ZLD. That basically means treat and reuse everything on site. No dumping.
Pretty much. That and other effluent standards set by environmental laws and the Central Pollution Control Board, the CPCB. These rules directly force companies to invest in treatment plants. ETPs for industrial waste, STPs for sewage.
Got it. ETPs and STPs.
The report does note that agriculture uses the most water overall, but it's really the industrial and domestic demand, especially concentrated in cities, that fuels the need for this kind of advanced treatment infrastructure.
It's interesting. The problem itself becomes a driver. The pollution, the scarcity we talked about, they create the urgency.
Absolutely. The worse the pollution, the more pressure there is for treatment. Same with groundwater running out.
And climate change is in the mix too, I assume.
Oh, definitely. The report highlights how climate change makes water cycles less reliable. You get more extreme weather droughts, floods, unpredictable monsoons.
Which makes relying on just rainfall or rivers much riskier.
Right. So that increases the need for more resilient systems, things like rainwater harvesting, sure, but also recharging groundwater artificially, and decentralized treatment systems that aren't dependent on one big vulnerable source.
Okay, so we've got the scale of the problem and these big drivers: urbanization, industry, regulation, climate change. The report also emphasizes the government's role, right? Even though water is technically a state subject.
Yes, that's a key point. While states manage water day to day, the central government is playing a really crucial role as a catalyst. They're doing this through big national flagship programs.
And these programs are basically pushing industries and cities to invest.
That's the idea. They provide policy direction and, crucially, funding. This helps create the demand for treatment projects, opening up opportunities for companies in the sector.
The report flags a few specific major programs. Jeevan mission?
Yeah, launched in 2019. Its goal is huge. Provide working tap water connections to every single rural household in India.
Wow. Okay, that's ambitious. And Namami Gange.
That one started back in 2014. It's focused specifically on cleaning up the Gange River basin, a massive undertaking involving pollution control, building wastewater treatment plants all along the river.
And AMU 2.0.
AMU 2.0, launched in 2021, is more about the urban side, improving city water supply, sewerage systems, making water use more efficient.
These sound like huge initiatives, potentially creating a lot of work.
They are. And connecting back to the big picture, the report sees these programs as vital for turning that environmental urgency we talked about into actual concrete infrastructure projects. They create a visible pipeline of work.
Which leads us neatly into the investment opportunity side of things. The report basically argues that this mix, the water stress, the rising demand, the government push, the available tech, makes this whole water sector in India a pretty compelling long-term story.
Yes, exactly. It's described as maybe a niche sector compared to, say, roads or power, but an absolutely essential one. And the report zooms in on 5 specific companies they think are particularly well placed to benefit.
All right, let's get into those. What does the report say about the first one, VA Tech Wabag?
Okay, Wabag, they're presented as a pure-play water tech company. So water is their main game. They do the EPC engineering, procurement, construction, basically building the plants.
Got it.
And importantly, they also do O&M operations and maintenance, running the plants after they're built.
And that O&M part is quite attractive, isn't it? Steady income.
Very much so. The report notes they have high revenue visibility from those O&M contracts, giving them annuity-like cash flows. They're also global, operating in over 25 countries, and use an asset-light model focused on their engineering know-how. Technology focus is seen as a moat, a barrier to entry.
And the report mentions triggers for them, like their order book.
Yeah, a strong order book is highlighted, 14,300 crore as of FY25. A crore is 10 million rupees, so that's significant, gives them good visibility. Plus, upcoming international BOOT projects.
BOOT, build, own, operate, transfer.
Exactly. Another model that generates long-term income. Strategically, the report mentions their shift towards EP plus O&M build plus operate, which tends to have better margins. They're also being more selective about projects and have this RIDI strategy for profitable growth. Their typical operating profit margin, OPM, is cited as 9–11%.
Okay, next up, Ion Exchange. What's their story, according to the report?
Ion Exchange is positioned as a real pioneer in India's water industry. Over 60 years in the business, they cover the whole value chain, from chemicals to engineering projects, strong in higher margin segments, backed by their own R&D.
So different from Wabag's pure play focus, more diversified.
A bit, yeah. The report notes a big chunk of their revenue comes from recurring sources like O&M and selling specialty chemicals. That provides stability. They also have a significant export business, around 40% of revenue. Management emphasizes capital efficiency and sustainable solutions. Their FY25 order book was smaller, around 3,850 crore, but their OPM percent is higher, cited at 12–14%.
And key triggers for Ion Exchange.
The report points to their solid engineering order book, plus steady O&M income, like from a big contract with UP Jal Nigam. They also have a huge bid pipeline, potential future orders worth maybe 8,500 crore. And they're investing heavily, about 500 crore in CapEx, expanding facilities in Roha and Odisha, especially for resins and chemicals.
And strategically, Where are they heading?
Strengthening their international business, pushing leadership in membranes and consumer water products, and selectively taking on government infra projects where their expertise really fits.
Okay, third on the list is Conquered Envirosystems or Seawater. What's their niche?
Seawater is presented as a specialist in decentralized solutions. Think smaller, localized treatment systems. They're strong in industrial ZLD, water recycling, and sewage treatment, particularly using advanced membrane tech like RO, UF, MBR.
So less about the huge municipal plants, more tailored solutions.
Often, yes. The report highlights their modular, plug-and-play systems, scalable, efficient. They also have significant export revenues and achieve high margins, reportedly due to proprietary designs. Their FY25 order book was 532 crore, with a notably wide OPM range of 13–20%.
And what are the triggers for Seawater?
Converting their large bid pipeline around 2,000 crore, aiming for about a 30% win rate. Executing high-margin international projects like these green ZLD ones in Africa and the U.S. Plus, their expanding capacity, including backward integration, making their own membranes, containerized units.
Their strategic direction.
Expanding third-party O&M services, moving into related areas like compressed biogas, CBG, from waste, co-Euro capture, even water for semiconductor manufacturing. And, like others, scaling up internationally.
Right. Number 4 is EMS Limited. How are they described?
EMS is presented as more of a multidisciplinary EPC company. Their core is water and wastewater infra, STPs, ETPs, WTPs, sewerage, plus O&M. But they also do other civil work like roads and buildings, sometimes using the HAM model.
HAM hybrid annuity model, we mentioned that. Government pays partly upfront, then annuities.
Correct. Reduces contractor risk. The report notes EMS has a strong in-house engineering team, over 65 people, which they say helps them achieve really high operating margins, 23% to 27%.
It's quite high.
It is. Almost all their projects are government-funded or backed by multilaterals like the World Bank, so entirely domestic, B2G focus, business to government. The report stresses this means very low credit risk, basically zero bad debts. Their FY25 order book was 2,236 crore, with most expected to be done in 2 years.
Key triggers for EMS.
That healthy order book gives near-term visibility, plus a big active bid pipeline over 4,500 crore. They're targeting winning 600–700 crore in new orders soon.
And their strategy.
Targeting selective large projects, focusing on maintaining those high margins. Expanding geographically within India, the report mentions a recent win in West Bengal. And diversifying a bit into non-water infra, specifically bidding for HAM road projects.
Okay, last one, profile. Enviro Infra Engineers, or EL. What's the report say about them?
EL is described as a fast-growing Indian engineering firm. Similar to EMS, in some ways, design, construction, operation of water, wastewater infrastructure.
Primarily government projects again.
Yes, nearly 100% public sector revenue, according to the report, focus on STPs, ETPs, pumping stations, asset-light model, in-house engineering, technology focus. They're also exploring PPC and HAM models. Their FY25 order book was 1,991 crore, and notably, 40% of that is O&M contracts, providing that recurring revenue stream. Their OPM percent is cited between 22% and 24%.
Also quite high margins. Triggers for EL.
That robust order book, especially the strong O&M component, good visibility from their bid pipeline too. They've bid for 2,200 crore, expecting to bid for another 2,000 crore soon.
And their strategic direction.
They're aiming for bigger projects, larger STPs, larger common ETPs for industrial clusters. They're also moving into HAM projects and making a push into related clean energy areas like CBG plants and solar EPC work.
Okay, so that's a snapshot of the 5 companies. Pulling it all together, what's the report's final word on the sector as a whole?
The main takeaway is that India's water treatment sector is really at a decisive inflection point. That's the phrase they use.
An inflection point, meaning things are about to change significantly.
Exactly. It's this moment where the environmental need, the regulatory pressure, and the available technology are all converging with this massive infrastructure requirement.
And this combination, the water stress plus the rising demand, isn't just a blip. The report calls it a structural investment theme, right? Relevant for decades.
Yes, absolutely. Multi-decade relevance. And those big government programs as Jeevan, Namami Gange, AMR 2.0 are seen as critical catalysts, really pushing this shift forward now.
And the companies profiled, they're seen as positioned to ride this wave because of their specific strength, their business models, order books, strategic moves into O&M or tech or international markets.
Precisely. For long-term investors, the report suggests the sector offers this interesting mix. Defensive growth, because water's essential, potential for steady cash flows from O&M, and importantly, strong alignment with ESG goals, environmental, social, governance.
Of course, the report mentions things investors need to watch, like how well companies execute these big projects, how they manage their working capital.
Sure, the usual operational risks. And for some, how well they diversify internationally.
But the big picture trend seems clear from the report's perspective.
Very clear. Water isn't just, the next big thing in Indian infrastructure.
The report calls it the next sustainability megatrend.
Yeah, and that's a really powerful thought to end on. If water security is so fundamental to economic growth, and the challenge in India is this immense, well, how might the growth of the sustainability megatrend ripple out and reshape other industries far beyond just water treatment in the years ahead? Definitely something for you to think about.